A video on YouTube by the title "They Celebrate the Prophet's Death" Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam has in one place received over 7,000 views, and the same material is available elsewhere on YouTube and the internet too. The speaker regurgitates the same tired arguments of the opponents of Mawlid in a continuation of this annual campaign of misinformation. In an age when people have devalued religious knowledge to such an extent that they would rather base their aqaid on 4 and 5 minute trailers which are shared from YouTube throughout social networking sites, it's easy to see how the common people become so confused and fall for such defective understanding of the source text of this religion. Allah Almighty has warned the Ummah of this fallacy that every single common man is entitled to reject historical scholarly opinion and form his own interpretation. Thus Allah Almighty says in the Quran, وَمَا يَأْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. But none of them understand except the people of knowledge. So to move on to the actual content of this video, the speaker begins by trying to trick the audience into accepting his misinformation by juxtaposing two unrelated concepts, placing side by side two unrelated concepts to create a subliminal link in the mind of his listener. The commemoration of the Mawlid is not comparable to any pre-Islamic festival of the Arabs, nor to the festivals or feast days of any other religion or sect. Because the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam came to eradicate falsehood, and the Sharia brought by him supersedes and abrogates every single previous codification of religious law. His coming therefore, and by extension, the mention and commemoration of his coming, represents an intrinsic and outright rejection of Jahiliyyah, represents an outright rejection of pre-Islamic ignorance along with all of its customs and traditions. The speaker continues by trying to draw comparisons with modern public holidays such as Labor Day, national holidays and Mother's Day. This is a shameless irony that a speaker from this sect should include these red herrings in a discussion pertaining to the Mawlid of the Prophet Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. The Ahl Sunnah is neither known for nor defined by these celebrations, but well known are the fatwa, the legal verdicts of the Wahhabi movement legitimizing the celebration of Saudi national days, legitimizing the celebration of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab Day. Well known are the millions of Saudi riyal spent in these celebrations and their ideological successes in the Indian subcontinent. They host Hindu guests in 100-year commemorations of their Darul Uloom in Deoband. Yes, those people who warn the Ummah of the supposed dangers of shirk in standing in the ta'zim, standing in the reverence of the Messenger Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam, see no shame in standing in the ta'zim of a Hindu mushrik, Prime Minister and her entourage. So this cheap style of delivery, which is so common to the speakers of the Najdi movement, betrays not only their lack of moral, but also intellectual principle, which extends right to the very core of the speaker's main accusations against the Ahl Sunnah. As the title of the video says, they celebrate the Prophet's death. The speaker states, and I quote, "The consensus of all scholars that he died upon the 12th of Rabi Awwal, or the 3rd month of the Islamic calendar, which means when you claim to be celebrating the birth of the Prophet Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam, you're actually celebrating his death." Now, this baseless claim is refuted with 3 points. Firstly, a brief analysis of the actual date that the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam passed away.
Secondly, I look at the Islamic guidelines and limits governing celebration and grief.
And thirdly, understanding the way in which the Ahl Sunnah views the passing of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from this earth. So to begin with the first point, this fact cannot and should not be hidden. This speaker, whilst it's clear that he holds the Ahl Sunnah in contempt, he holds higher contempt for his listeners, because he feels no shame in brazenly and blatantly lying to them. So to any confused brother or sister who takes their deen from online recordings of the pseudo-scholars of the Najdi movement, let me tell you that those who you respect, those who you take your religion from, they view you as idiots. They feel that they can fearlessly lie to you, deceive you, conceal information from you without any retribution or recourse. Leave these fraudsters and charlatans and come to the scholars of the Ahl Sunnah. Because those who you follow at this moment in time lie to you on many issues. issues of their beliefs, issues of our beliefs, issues of our practices and customs, issues of what the sources of the religion say, and issues of what the scholars of the past have historically said. Because the fact is clear, there is no scholarly consensus on this issue. The scholars do not unanimously agree that the Messenger ﷺ passed away on the 12th of Rabiul-Awwal. In fact, Hafiz ibn Kathir, who is held in such high esteem by the Najdi movement, he devotes an entire section, an entire discussion of his work, Al-Bidayah wa-Nihaya, to the ikhtilaf, the scholarly disagreement pertaining to the date that the Messenger ﷺ passed away. And with the support of these various narrations that he includes, we can establish that 4 different dates have been discussed for the passing of the Prophet ﷺ. The 1st, 2nd, 10th and 12th of Rabiul Awwal. And for brevity, we won't discuss the detail of these narrations here. But if you look below this video on YouTube, and if you look in the information box, you will find the detail of these narrations quoted by Hafiz ibn Kathir in his work Al-Bidayah wa-Nihaya. And while Hafiz ibn Kathir's discussion of ikhtilaf is sufficient to dispel any notions of a scholarly consensus on the date of the 12th, in fact, if we look in Fathul Bari, which is the magnum opus commentary of Sahih Bukhari, authored by Imam al-Asqalani, radiyallahu ta'ala an, we see that after a lengthy discussion, an evaluation of all of the sources, Imam al-Asqalani radiyallahu ta'ala an concludes that the 2nd of Rabiul Awwal was the day that the Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam passed away. And the conclusion of Imam al-Asqalani radiyallahu an, this conclusion that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam passed away on the 2nd of Rabiul Awwal is more than sufficient for the true people of hadith. Which brings us to our second discussion, that of the limits of mourning and celebration in Islam. Now, celebration in Islam, whilst governed by the general limits of halal and haram, is not limited by restriction of time or place. We can, and indeed as Muslims should, continue to value and express gratitude for that which Allah Almighty has blessed us with without any fear of an expiry date. In every time and every place, we can thank and praise Allah for His blessings. But in the case of mourning a loss, this is not the case. Our religion does not permit us to mourn for longer than 3 days. So now, over 1400 years after our beloved Prophet ﷺ has departed this world, there is no possibility of a Muslim mourning his passing. And by doing so, and in our actions throughout this month, the Ahl Sunnah act upon the advice of the luminary of this ummah, Imam al-Suyuti radiyallahu anhu writes, in this month, one should express happiness for his birth and not grieve his passing. Which leads us on to our final discussion, the discussion of the significance in which the passing of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is understood by the Ahl Sunnah. We say that the passing of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not a matter of grief for this ummah, because we understand from countless narrations that not just his life, but his passing too are good for this ummah. And thus in Bab al-Fada'il of Sahih Muslim, we find that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Inna Allah azza wa jalla idha arada rahmata ummatin min ibadi qabada nabiyyaha qabalaha. When Allah Almighty intends mercy for an ummah amongst His slaves, He brings their prophet to pass away before them. قَبَدَ نَبِيَّهَا قَبَلَهَا. He brings their prophet to pass away before them. So this is a day of happiness because it signifies and attests to the divine intention of rahmah for this ummah. This day proves that Allah Almighty intends mercy for this ummah. It is a day of happiness, for it marks the day that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam completed that task for which Allah Almighty sent him in this world. Furthermore, this is a day of happiness because the passing of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was by his own choice. He chose to pass away so that he might be united with that which is with Allah Almighty. And this is mentioned in the clear hadith of Mishkat al-Masabi and included in the famous seerah work, accepted and approved by all of the clerics of Saudi Arabia, the Sealed Nectar. And in conclusion, it's worth noting that the world grieves dead people. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam is not dead. Indeed, he passed away. We do not say that he did not come to die, but he is once again alive in his grave. Because Allah Almighty clearly states, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. And do not call those who are slain in Allah's way as dead. Rather they live, but you perceive it not. And the hadith informs us, إِنَّ اللَّهَ حَرَّمَ عَلَى الْعَرَضِ أَن تَأْكُلَا أَجْسَادَ الْأَنْبِيَّاءِ. Verily Allah has prohibited the earth from consuming the bodies of the prophets. So he lives, He is the greatest mercy of Allah. It is He who guided us to Allah, and no amount of misinformation or dishonesty would attract the people of faith and intellect from celebrating His coming in this earth. Sallallahu tabarak wa ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And when such lack of honesty and integrity from these speakers of the Najdi movement has been established, this is sufficient for the public to abandon them, to cease to listen to them. Do not lend these sources your ears, for I advise my brothers and sisters to fear Allah and to remain with the truthful, because Allah Almighty says, وَقُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ, and be with the truthful.